Hello everyone, welcome to our show Meet the Global Leader. This is an initiative by School of Entrepreneurship Development. Here we invite global leaders to share their journey so that our young generation can get inspiration from them. I'm Naima Kamal, host of the show, and I'm delighted to welcome our today's guest, Lavinia Muth. She is a speaker, mentor, and consultant on the ethical business practices and social justice with more than 10 years of experience in international project. So, hi, how are
Hi,
you?
Oishi. I'm good. I'm a little bit, over here in Germany, it's like end of the year. Christmas
Oh,
is almost there, so like everything is a little rushy, and every time I try to like do like proper time management at the end of the year, but this never works actually. So like I'm running a little bit behind of deadlines, like everybody is. But I'm good. And I'm very happy because I'm German, but I lived in Argentina 20 years
oh,
ago. So obviously my heart, is with the Argentinian football players. So since Sunday, I'm like in party mood. I think like
oh,
you guys in Bangladesh as well, right? Because you're like super
yes,
fans of Argentina. So yeah.
yes. People are crazy over Argentina and Brazil, and they even fight for them actually. So here, many Argentina fans are very happy, and it was it's big achievement for Messi, especially because we
Yes.
are all hoping that Messi will get this cup, and it
Yeah, totally. Me too. Me too. And that's why I'm sitting here, drinking the mate, this tea they drink in Argentina. I drink it 24/7.
oh, you love Argentina.
Yes, I live there. My heart is Argentinian, basically.
Then congratulations to you too.
Thank you. No, no, no. I don't take these credits. No, it's all for them.
Yeah, yeah. So, we are going to talk about you all day, all the whole time, and we want to know many things about you and your backstory. So, please start with your childhood. Uh, Tell us a bit about your childhood.
About my childhood. Well, right now I'm 37 years old. So I was born in 85 in Germany, in the middle of Germany, in West Germany, because during these times Germany was still, separated. We had like West Germany, like the democratic, well, how can I say this, capitalist part, and then we had East Germany, right? And I must admit that, yeah, I had a very, 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 very privileged childhood. Well, first of all, because I was born in Germany, and I think like being born in the global north, it's already a privilege, because like basically we recently talked about this, due to colonization and, history, like we basically become like are part of the 5%, of the 5% having like a good living standard in the world. But I was anyways born into a family where both my parents have always been working and working a lot, but they had shops. So one of the shops was in our house and our apartment was on top, and my parents were like working 24/7, but they were always there, because I could just, go down the stairs and then talk to my parents or talk to my mom or my dad if I needed something. And I think this is already like for a child a privilege, because most people, most parents need to work. They are not there over the whole day. And yeah, and I was also born in a very small town here in Germany where really like the world is still in order, So when I was a child, I could like at the age of 3, I like my mom sent me alone to kindergarten, My parents didn't need to bring me because like small towns and like villages over here in Germany are pretty secure, So as a child, I could, whenever I wanted, leave the house, go to the kindergarten, go to school, play in the woods, and so on and so forth. So yeah, that was basically my childhood. And the other thing is that my parents had, I told you, like shops, and they
Yes.
had a shop where they sold toys. So I was basically educated and grown. I grew up in a toy shop. In our apartment upstairs, we only had toys made out of wood because my parents are like alternative people. But downstairs, in the shop, we had everything. Nintendo, Sega, Barbie, everything. Yeah, a child could dream of. So I would say my childhood, was very nice and very positive. And then when I was 16, I had the chance. I received a scholarship for a school exchange, because although I grew up very privileged, my parents don't have an academic background. They have always been workers here in Germany, and there's a couple of scholarships over here in Germany for children of non-academic parents. And I received one of these scholarships, and that's why when I went to Argentina at the age of 16, I spent 1 year as a student in Argentina going to secondary school. And and that was like the first time, obviously, I left Europe. I left Europe, and that was the first time I experienced living in an unstable economy and what it is to, because I was born in Europe. I was born in Germany. When I was born, we had the Deutsche Mark. That was the currency. Afterwards, we had the euro. And over here, everything is like always working, and like money and currency and economy is always stable. And then I moved to Argentina and in 2002, and Argentina had like an economic crisis in 2001. And basically overnight in 2001, like the stock market and everything crashed down, and like 50% of the country basically, went into poverty. It has never been, like a rich country, but then even more. And that was obviously like one of the big lessons, because then like I realized, oh shit, I really come from a very privileged place, and 80% of the world population lives in economies which are unstable, do receive a salary which is not enough to actually survive, and like basically do not have access to clean water and the basic needs, and that was really, that was a big lesson.
But you have a very good childhood. I'm really impressed from your story. So, were you involved with any activities during your study? And what skill did you develop by doing those activities?
Yeah, again, I had the privilege to live in Argentina and observe as a very young, person, without any responsibilities, because I was 16 when I moved to Argentina, and I lived in a host family, and the only responsibility I had was to integrate myself, to learn the language and become part, of the family and society for 1 year. But I didn't have like the responsibility to work and so on and so forth. So I could observe. And then after secondary school, I actually, before starting university, because I was always very interested in India, and Bollywood and the food and, everything. So after secondary school, before starting university, I actually packed my bags and I traveled to India, and I worked for a women NGO over there for 1 year, like giving English classes and so on and so forth in a very rural area in India, in Rajasthan, like 40 kilometers from the Pakistani border. Yes, and over there I realized, because I always wanted to work like in development aid, like helping the poor. But then like I was 19 when I went to India, and then being in India, I realized what a shit show this is, and how egoistic and ignorant I had been before, that I was basically driven like by so-called white saviorism. We white European people always think, we can go, to a country in the global south and educate people and, show them how to live a better life. But no, it's not the case. And that's when I realized, okay, eventually, like working in development aid is not going to have the impact. And also my role as a white Western woman is not, it's not okay, with like an ethical view. on everything. And and then when I came back and with my experience from India and South America, I started studying business administration because I was a little lost at the age of 19, how most young people are lost, when we leave secondary school and there's so much pressure from like the economy, from society, from our parents who tell us, no, you need to become a doctor and you need to become a lawyer, blah, 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 blah. And and that's why I started studying business administration, because obviously business administration leaves you, with a lot of options. Yes. And I thought it would be a good idea to learn a little bit about like how money works, how business models work, how the world works. And during that time, I was convinced that supporting like private economies could have the potential to scale up, better business practices also in global supply chains. So I started like going to university with that mindset. And during my time in India, I made a friend, and she comes from the north of India, and they were having like little school projects. So I was basically, besides, like donating a little bit of money, but not in an institutionalized way, like only like school money for, children in India. Yeah. But I also I rushed through university because I really I didn't like university. I must admit, I didn't learn a lot in university. I don't think we learn a lot in university, especially when we talk about business administration. I think the whole curriculum and modules are really, based on very old business models.
Yeah, that's right.
And, it's not the real world, when you study business administration, because afterwards, because when you study business administration, you learn a lot about organization management and how things should be done. And then you start working in like the real economy, and you realize, oh, everything is irregulated. Actually, nobody is doing what he or she should be doing. Everybody is only trying to, accumulate capital.
That's right. I'm also from this background, and I can relate this thing that it don't actually go the way book shows us or teach us actually. So I think practical knowledge is very important.
Yeah, so for me, exactly. It was like, for me, it was personally super important to leave university as soon as I could, because I didn't feel, that I was grabbing substance and learning about, how to move things and how to change things. I mean, yes, we need to understand the current system, how it works in order to disrupt it. That's right. But at the end of the day, it's not, it's not everything. There you are again. Is the connection okay? Do you hear me well?
Yeah, I can hear you. Okay. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes. So super quickly, I rushed through university because I wanted to finish these stupid studies, I must admit. Yeah, and then I started working at a consultancy company, and they were specialized in ecological and social standard requirements and in the implementation. So basically checking human rights, due diligence, and global supply chains. And because when I was in university, I also thought, human rights are the basis of everything. There's the Human Rights Convention, I don't know, from post Second World War. And when I started working, I realized, it was a surprise for me that almost no company in the world is actually able to comply and track and trace how far I'm talking about basic human rights, I'm talking about labor contracts, I'm talking about minimum salaries, I'm talking about non-discrimination, I'm talking about forced labor. And I was really surprised that most companies in the world actually have no idea what is happening in their supply chains. And I was like, oh gosh, that really needs to change.
I agree with you. I totally agree with you. So tell us about your organization and the impact you are creating for your community.
Yeah. Well, my organization, it's not yet an organization. So basically, I worked 8 years in a consultancy company, which is and was specialized in sustainable management practices and like business practices. And actually, during these 8 years of consultancy work, I learned everything I am able to do today. That was like the best school of my life. And thanks to like my former travels and like a couple of languages I speak, I again had the privilege to travel a lot, because they were like sending me wherever they couldn't find any, person who spoke the language or whatever. So yeah, basically I traveled to almost every country in the world where textiles are produced, and I could visit factories and do some consultancy work and so on and so forth. And after these 8 years, and for the past 4 years, I worked at a fashion brand over here in Germany. The fashion brand is called Armed Angels, and it's one of the big sustainable fashion brands here in Europe. And I was the head of sustainability there. And then I quit 1 year ago.
Oh,
Yes, I quit out of nowhere. Like every important decision I made in my life, I actually made from my gut.
Okay.
Like I didn't do any like proper assessment or anything because at the end of the day, I think we are all responsible for ourselves, right?
Yes.
So obviously we might talk to experts or to our parents and so on and so forth, but at the end of the day, it's us who do and make the decisions for ourselves and our lives. And at least in my case, everything always like went more or less okay. I mean, as I said before, like most important decisions I made from my gut. And obviously sometimes it gets challenging, but I mean, life and the world is challenging. So yeah, whenever, there's a stone in our way, we have to find the solution. Eventually, we can jump over or go around or, put it aside, whatever is the applicable solution in that moment. And well, then I quit because I realized I didn't want to be the person anymore who works in a broken business model.
Okay.
Which in my opinion is, like textile companies producing for most textile brands and companies, the overall strategic goal is selling more and more and more and more and more and more, economies of scale. But then on the other hand, we are like in this deep ecological crisis, right? So basically like we have been extracting too many resources over the last 50 years. And everybody's talking about climate change and climate crisis and degrowth and that we have to, change consumerism, at least over here in Europe, It's different for you guys in the global south. Yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
Because for you, it is different because we have been extracting your resources and, oppressed you guys for the last 500 years. So when I talk about degrowth and that we need to consume less, I do not mean you guys. I mean us, in Europe.
I understand.
No, that's very important, because a lot of people talk about degrowth and then they're like, but I mean, no, like we cannot tell the people in Bangladesh, to consume less. And obviously not. I mean, most of the people in Bangladesh, basically need to start consuming, because they were not able to consume because they, because of an oppressed system, they haven't been participating in global economies over the last years. So I'm talking about Europe. But anyways, I realized I didn't want to work for a company anymore, which business model and strategy is purely based on growth and producing and selling more. Although it's sustainable products, like organic cotton and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
So I quit out of the blue because my gut told me so. And and then I wanted to do a PhD because I researched in the field of child labor and global trade in the past. And it's like a topic which doesn't leave me sleeping, basically, because, it's like really, child labor and the informal work and sector, like women and children It's a big factor in global economies, and basically
Mm.
nobody is realizing it. And now in the pandemic, it actually got worse.
Yes.
And it was really hard to find a scholarship because nobody's
Mm.
interested in it. If you want to do a PhD in like carbon and climate components and generic sustainability and circularity and like social entrepreneurship, everybody's like, yes. But basically nobody is really interested to actually fight and tackle child labor. So I was struggling a little bit over there because I didn't receive the scholarships I hoped
Mm.
for receiving. But then everything like just it just happened, and then a lot of companies and NGOs were contacting me and asked for
Mm.
my help. And that's why I'm, right now in the middle of like becoming self-employed and creating an own consultancy company. And that's basically my organization. It's not yet an organization, but it's becoming an organization. So I'm really interested in consulting and helping out companies and NGOs
Mm.
and society institutions to tackle injustices,
Yes.
of our global economies. And that's what I'm doing,
It's
basically.
amazing actually that you took the initiative, because people need to take initiative. If they don't, then what will happen to us, the struggling people? Um,
Yeah, right. But you also have, you in Bangladesh, you also have like people like doing these kind of
yes.
works. I don't think you need a white person to tell you what to do, but I am here to tell the other white persons
But we
how to do better business with you
yeah.
guys. That's what I'm doing.
But our people are also need to learn, they are obviously there some scope to learn, and they obviously missing something. So you people can like people like you can teach us. This is what are we doing actually. That's why we're inviting you people, so that the young leaders of our country can learn from you.
Yeah,
uh,
yeah, 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 yeah. Or maybe like, yeah, I always try to stay as humble as possible, but yeah, that's what I always said. Like, if I'm able to motivate people,
yeah.
wherever in the world, like to drive change, to fight for justice, obviously, I do it. But I think like the young people in Bangladesh, you can all be so proud of your country. Although I mean, it's difficult, it's politically very fueled. I know that,
Yeah.
but with the history you have, and the big working class, and people are really really struggling and working. I don't know any country in the world where people are working so much,
Yes.
really. And the reason why the economy is growing is not because of external investments, it's because of the working class. Because you guys are fucking working your asses off, and it's because of you. It's like that. And you should always remember, because I know that even like young people, always tend to, look out for like external, role models, especially like from the West. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think you should definitely be your own role models.
Uh, how did your earlier career choice lead you to where you are now?
How did my what?
Earlier career choices.
Yeah. Yeah, as I told you before, like my earlier career choices were more driven by, my gut. And
Oh yeah.
sometimes, I mean, this is not like when you go to university, nobody talks to you about feelings and how your gut works, and how like your inner senses work, It always has to be like very pragmatic and
Mm,
very like realistic, and everything has to be, like logically decided. But I think we human beings do have some internal senses, to actually grasp, okay, this is the right way, this is not the right way. Although everybody tells me that this professor, this person, this business guy or woman, you know, is like the one to follow. But we somehow feel that in some cases, you know, we feel okay. Although everybody is following this person, maybe he or she is not the right mentor for me, you know? And at least for me, this worked. This has worked all my life. And on the other hand, I have always been, I hope, I have always been very humble, and I have tried to never rush things. You know, like in the first company I have been, you know, I was 8 years there, you know, and everybody in the meantime told me, Lavinia, you are very, you're not paid so well, you know, you should look for like the next career step and blah, 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 blah. But I don't know, I was always looking more for like impact in the work I was actually doing and learning for myself, because I mean, life is a, you know, long life learning session, and we are never ready, you know. I would not even, I mean, I'm 37 now and I work in the field of sustainability for almost 15 years now, but I would never call myself an expert because I'm not.
Sorry. Yeah.
Especially not in the field of sustainability.
Sorry, the internet connection was
failing.
It was failing. So I think it's all right now. Sorry for interruption.
No, all good. It can also be my internet. As I told you before, in Germany, it also sometimes doesn't work. But you didn't hear something? Shall I repeat something?
Yeah, if you repeat, it will be it will be good.
From your former question.
Yes.
Yes. So you were asking about like the career choices I made in the past, which led me to where I am right now, right?
Yes.
So yeah, I cannot give you like a cool business answer to that, because as I said before, like most like important big decisions I made in my life, I did following my gut. And I would really like to ask and call out all the other young people out there to eventually also follow a little bit more like your emotional and, you know, like internal voices, and do not decide everything by logic or like this is like the best career choice where you do like most of the money. I mean, obviously, it's always about survival, you know, in certain parts of the world. So this also is a very privileged argument of mine, obviously, to say, you know, it's not all about money. Yeah, but in some cases, it's all about money because it's about survival. I totally recognize that. But yes, somehow for me, everything has always fallen into place. But also because I've always been like pretty humble. And as I come from a working class family, you know, I know that like nothing is for free in life.
Yes.
Nothing. And like I always had that like over here, you know, as my parents were always telling me nothing is for free, you have to work, you know. And I mean, obviously there's like the big bridge of like being forced to work and not getting rewarded properly for work. But this also, I think, tells you your gut. If like an employer, you know, like forces you to work and isn't paying you properly. But that's basically like the big advice that we all start to make choices, you know, more with our hearts and not only following the right order or like logic, which is very conservative. Coming from a very, again, privileged situation, you know?
Yeah. So there are many people are commenting. So
I didn't see that.
Okay, Mahabubur Rahman asked, why do we need ethical fashion?
Yeah. I don't think we need ethical fashion. We need a system change, you know, because like ethical fashion is a niche product. And it's going to be a niche product, you know, and ethical fashion for now is defined like a textile product, which eventually is made out of, I don't know, like alternative or sustainable fibers and materials, like organic cotton and so on and so forth. And eventually in the supply chain, certain social requirements, are implemented. So people are getting at least the minimum salary, blah, 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 blah. But as I'm working in the field since 15 years, I see very little change and transformation in the whole industry, because ethical fashion is defined on product level and not on system level. And, the world population is increasing, and there's a lot of people working in the industry and a lot of people being exploited by the industry. So I actually think we don't need ethical fashion on product level. We need ethical business systems, and we need radical and drastic change how we do business. The whole industry needs to change. Each and every manufacturing unit, should be paying their workers correctly and should be implementing certain ethical business practices. But I also know that this can only happen if majorly Western brands start paying for the transformation. And this is the actual problem. It's not that, the Bangladeshi manufacturers don't want to, pay their workers properly. It's like, it's a top-down approach, and they are squeezed, and there's like investments in like greener technologies, but there's basically no investments in like workers' rights or social compliance. So yeah, that's my take on ethical fashion.
Okay. So, who or what inspired you the most in your long career?
What inspired me the most? I was mostly inspired by working with farmers, actually. I had the privilege to participate and conduct a couple of projects on transforming agricultural methods and like changing like conventional agriculture to organic or permaculture. And I was mostly inspired by the life and work of farmers. And I think there's a quote of Vandana Shiva, the Indian environmental activist. Like, she's a role model. She's like a real role model. Yes. And I think one of her quotes is that she says that farmers are the last free people on this earth. You're back. Did you hear what I said?
Yeah, I hear. I was there. I just removed my screen. I was there.
Oh, good. Yeah. So yeah, I was really, really, really inspired by farmers because as Vandana Shiva says, farmers are the last free people of the earth on our planet, because I mean they are co-living with nature, and if they are doing agriculture properly, in line, with like the rules of Mother Nature, they are even, supporting biodiversity and well-being for all of us, of the soil, of seeds, climate, and so on. So I must admit, I'm really amazed by different small-scale farming groups in the world I have been cooperating with. Yeah, very easy answer, but farmers. Farmers first.
Yeah, you are right. Actually, I agree with you. So what career mistake has given you the biggest lesson?
What career mistake? Let me think. What career mistake? I'm an optimistic person, so I'm very good at like, when something bad happens, I'm very good at like changing dynamics and like, like trying to take the challenge and, change it into something positive. That's why I actually, like there's no mistake which comes to me, because like it's life. I mean, we do make mistakes and we also do, make like a proper and the right decisions. But at the end of the day, it always depends like on the perspective or the parameter, So yeah, maybe, well, no, it's also like that hasn't been a mistake. Sometimes I made the mistake of being like questioning myself a lot, especially, when working with men.
Um,
That's what men do. And it's like our system and patriarchy, so they really make you uncomfortable and insecure. And yeah, I think those were the mistakes. Like sometimes I made myself smaller than I am because I became insecure because of what like a businessman was telling me, or like he was trying to, yeah, make me smaller, and tell me, yeah, girl, blah 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 blah. Yeah. But I mean, that happens all the time, because it's the system. Again, it's the society we live in. So I wouldn't call this a mistake, but I I I'm like right now, as I have reflected and know that in the past this has been happening, I try to see the patterns. Every time I work very closely with a dominant man, I'm able to see the patterns quicker, and then I'm able to confront them quicker, which
okay.
is very challenging,
Yes.
because
Yes.
telling men they're, behaving like, patriarchs, ooh,
It
fragile
will hurt their
masculinity.
male ego. It will hurt their male ego. Man can take those things. Actually, they're so vulnerable. I
Exactly,
think.
exactly.
uh, so you already shared many things, many stories. So, is there any stories like life-changing event in your life you can share with us?
Life-changing events in my life. Yeah, I think as I told you before, that I was so privileged at a very young age, yeah, to have like the opportunity to live and observe living in another country, like in Argentina, in South America, and also in India. I was also very
Yes.
young when I went to India, and I really had the time to, yeah, listen to the people and get to know like, intercultural connections, and how society works. I mean, like
Yes.
even for Argentina, it's a big country with very few people, but all like getting to know the whole history of colonization and former indigenous communities, and independence wars, and how like a former colonized country, defines identity, which is really difficult, and then like being, a lot of Europeans migrated there, and most of the indigenous communities were killed. So like finding an own identity is like really hard, and I think they're searching for it and struggling until today. And that's also why football, has such a big power, because in football they unite.
Yes.
They find their identity in football, And the same obviously also happened to me when I was in India. For us in Europe, um, we see Asia as like basically one country, because like we are really ignorant in Europe, and then, like you're in India and you're realizing, fuck, okay, this like just before 47, it was much bigger. And before
Yes.
the Brits came in, there was like different cultures, different communities, different religions. And there's a lot of languages, there's a lot of different food, there's a lot of, struggles. And I mean, I was living in Rajasthan next to the Pakistani border.
Oh.
So, I was like, they were telling me a lot about the conflict with Pakistan, and like the partition and how families were separated and everything. And then you realize, okay, my problems and my history in Europe are really so small compared to the rest of the world, and it's like really the world is so diverse, and we should
Yes.
basically embrace diversity and complexity and be not afraid of diversity. And we should really, really, really stop trying to put society and communities in one pot. I mean, having
Yeah.
a look at Bangladesh, in 71 you had the independence war,
Yeah. Yes.
not because of religion, but because of the language.
Yeah. This is a 50. Yes. It's, man, I think our story is very inspiring. Everyone's story is inspiring, but
Exactly,
we're
exactly. And we
very
should
proud
always
of
be
it actually.
curious. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, anyways, like the question was, yeah, life-changing
Life
moments.
changing
Okay, so
events.
yeah,
Yes.
I think I have life-changing moments like always when I listen to people who do not come from my geographical background, and I am able to listen and learn from their stories. So I always have life-changing moments because I realize, okay, I'm really living in my bubble. I thought, like values in society would be that and that, but no, values are always created by society. And only because I was raised and educated that way doesn't mean that this is the proper or right and adequate value for somebody else living somewhere else.
Yeah.
So yeah, lots of life-changing moments.
But
Always.
traveling actually helped you a lot to open your mind.
Yeah, of course. Totally,
Yeah.
totally. But also the way I was traveling. I think that
Yeah.
there's a big difference of like traveling and speed traveling, and like enjoying the beach, and
Mm.
like trying to grab a culture very quickly. And
Mm-hmm.
then basically, I don't know if I would call it like traveling. So I would more or less call it like observing and listening and
Okay.
learning. So I mean, I lived in India. If I take the time together, like at least I spent at least over the last 15 years, at least 3 years in India. Being in India, staying in India. But I would never say that I know India,
Mm.
because it's such a big country, it's such a diverse
Yeah.
culture. And same applies to me with Argentina. I'm traveling to Argentina since 20 years. I would say that my heart is Argentinian, but I do not yet know. I'm not able to feel Argentina. So
Yeah.
so yeah, I think traveling or like listening to people, I don't know, I don't think you need to travel there. Especially nowadays, in the climate crisis and everything. And yeah, it's also it's not so easy to travel for other people. For me, it's very easy having a German passport.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
For you guys, it's not so easy.
Yeah, it's very difficult actually.
So yeah,
Yeah.
no, but that's like, and I know that I'm like super privileged because only because I was born in Germany, I have access to the German passport, and like I can basically travel wherever I want to travel without visa. Most
Mm-hmm.
people in the world, it's really hard to actually get access to a passport. First of all,
Yeah.
get a passport, and then applying a visa, to go, I don't know, to another country is like, it's like a whole deal, and a lot of requirements are needed. So again,
Yeah.
I think nowadays with the internet, we can travel and learn about other cultures also in a different and other way. This is the cool thing about the internet. I think it has the potential to bring us together
Mm.
more.
Yeah, I agree with you. So what do you think about Bangladesh RMG industry? Did you work with the Bangladesh RMG industry before?
Yes, as I told you before, like I was working in this consultancy company for 8 years, and we were specialized like in the implementation of social and ecological standard requirements in producing countries. So I was now in Bangladesh now in November this year because I did like an independent
Oh,
research trip, because I was like, okay, if I want to keep on working in the human rights sector, and social justice sector, and like advocating, for like gender equality and all these important topics, I need to know what's going on, in the country which is the second biggest exporter of textiles, you
yeah.
know. So
Yes,
it's not
yes.
enough. In this case, it like for me, it was not enough, to sit on my desk and read some papers. So I knew I needed to travel because I knew I needed to talk to workers, trade unions, manufacturers, and so on and so forth, right? And the last time I was in Bangladesh was in 2009, actually 1 month before the Rana Plaza tragedy.
Oh, yeah.
And I was actually checking a factory near Rana Plaza in Savar during that time. So, yeah. I mean, what do I think about the RMG sector? Well, it's a very complex issue. As I said before, it's very politically fueled. I know I need to be very careful of what I'm saying over here.
No, you can
Because
say
it's
anything. Just
yeah,
your
because it's about politics, and it's I told you before about the top-down approach. Brands have on the industry, especially Western brands have on the industry, but obviously this top-down approach is followed in the RMG sector. It's not that the company heads and CEOs of the big manufacturing units, they are poor people. No. In comparison, So I see a lot of challenges over there, but I also see a lot of opportunities, especially, with like workers' rights movements and the internet and so on and so forth. I think for the past years, there has been a big opportunity to hide a lot of information and transparency data. But now with the internet, even, information about workers' strikes and scandals and so on also reach the European Union and the rest of the world. So I do see some potential over there, but from what I've been seeing, I mean, I haven't been visiting Bangladesh for 9 years, and it was like an independent research trip where my goal was to check what has changed and if something has changed for the better in the industry. And of course, something has changed, there have been like more than 4,000 factory audits on building safety since Rana Plaza, So like safety at the workplace has been improving a lot, and there has also been like a lot of improvements when it comes to environmental management systems, So there's a lot of wastewater treatment plants which have been rebuilt. There's a lot of so-called LEED certified factories, who run on like 50 to 60% of renewable energies and so on and so forth. What I'm not seeing is that there has been like real proper improvements of like workers' rights and salaries and so on and so forth. So I'm really, really missing out like the human side of all of this. And and in the cases where something has improved, I think it has been improved because the workers themselves went on the streets, and spoke out and called out the manufacturing units and European and Western brands. It's not the brands who have been, supporting living wages or something like that. Because I have been working with European Western brands for the past almost 15 years, and I know how pricing strategies work and how prices are dumped. So again, go on the streets, fight for your rights. It's worth it.
So how do you see Bangladesh RMG sector after 5 to 10 years?
As I said before, it's improving. It has been improving. Obviously, I don't want to give any thank or something like that to Rana Plaza or something like that, because it was like one of the biggest tragedies in the RMG sector. And if you have a look at like the lawsuits and stuff like that, I mean, almost no family of like former workers who have died there have actually received compensation. Only very few ones from the government and from some Western brands. But obviously this tragedy made or created a lot of awareness in the world, in Bangladesh itself,
yes,
and in the world, So I do see a lot of improvements. I do see a lot of energy of Bangladeshi activists and some entrepreneurs, who really want to show that Bangladesh can do more than fast fashion. And I really hope that not only like in Europe and in other countries, people realize that, but also in Bangladesh themselves, because of all the tragedies and scandals of the last years, I do understand that a lot of young people actually don't want to work in the industry, not even as professionals or engineers, But, if we have a look at the history, and the economic power and importance the RMG sector has in Bangladesh, I really hope that more young people, become motivated to work in the industry and to actually drive change. It's challenging because it's a very conservative industry with right now most CEOs being involved in politics. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy to drive the transformation. But I think it's more than worthwhile, and it does make sense. Yeah, and I think Bangladesh has the power and the potential to become, well, first of all, to stay one of the biggest exporters of garments, but also to become a leader in more ethical business practices.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I totally actually agree with you. So, what do you think about the future skill need for the youth to excel in their field, like professional career or entrepreneur, to become entrepreneur?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, obviously, education has to improve in Bangladesh. When I was in Bangladesh in November, I participated in a big sustainability conference called Made in Bangladesh Week. And I participated in one of the panel discussions, and there was a professor from, I don't know, some important university in the UK. And he was basically claiming and saying something like, blah, 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 blah. What was he saying? Yeah, he said I think more Bangladeshi students should come to the UK to learn about the textile industry, to do a better job in Bangladesh. And I was almost I was freaking out in the audience, but then I was trying to calm myself, down, because I didn't want to start a politically incorrect discussion, in this very big, important Hall of Fame of the Made in Bangladesh Week. And I think that's not the right approach. I think, first of all, English, if English or European students want to learn about textile industry, they should come to Bangladesh, because that is where textile production is happening.
Yeah.
In major quantities, right? And on the other hand, it was a really very ignorant argument from that UK professor, because if he would know how, we were talking about this before, how difficult it is for a Bangladeshi student to receive a passport and a visa and, scholarship, lots of families take loans, so that the young people, can go to Europe or to the US, to study. So I think, first of all, if somebody wants to become an expert in textile production, they should go to Bangladesh, India, and China, because this is where the magic is happening. On the other hand, obviously, curricula and education at universities has to improve, definitely, in Bangladesh. And then I think, obviously, business administration and economics, how the business world works is very important. How to implement ethical business practices is very important. How to include human rights due diligence from the beginning. How to care for the environment. All these skills, business managers nowadays need, That's what is requested. And then obviously what is also requested is a lot of textile engineers and textile chemists, because we need good people in the industry who know how machinery works, who know how dyeing technologies work, who know how innovation works, when we talk about Web3 and digital fashion and all of that. So yes, I think that's what is needed. And obviously you need more, we need more women
Yes.
in important positions in the industry, because we know that, there's scientific studies and loads of research that women are more efficient at the workplace, especially in leadership positions, and better organized. So
Yeah.
yeah, and they're also very good engineers, actually, because they know how to prioritize.
But
Because
people,
we learn it.
especially men don't prefer a leader, a woman leader.
I know.
I think somehow it actually hurt their male ego
Yeah.
to follow a woman's order. I saw it happen, so that's
Yeah.
why I was saying.
Yeah.
So, so unfortunately, that's all the time we have. So it was
Oh,
such a pleasure to talking to you. Thanks
it
for
was a
giving
pleasure talking
time.
to you, my dear. Did we run through all the questions?
Yeah,
Ah,
yeah.
perfect. Perfect. Really good time management. Better than my time management lately.
No, no, but it was amazing to discuss with you these things, and I have really good time, and I hope young leaders will be highly benefited through this program and by your speech. So
I
I think
also
we
hope
have
so.
to, yeah, I think we have to finish this session today. I hope we can work with you more, and I
Yes,
hope
and
we can have.
I'm definitely coming to Bangladesh next year again. I don't know when,
Okay.
but yeah, I'm definitely coming.
I wish we held this session before November, so we can have a chit chat in November when you came.
Yes. Well, next year we
We
can
just
have that.
yeah. I hope so. So please
Sure.
be with us, and we are hoping that we can work with you more. So this is the end of the show. Thank you, everyone, and good night. And I
Thank
good
you.
night to you also.
Thank you
So
so much. Well, it's only 5 o'clock over here in Germany. So
okay,
I still need
good
to work now.
afternoon.
But you have dinner and then a nice evening, please.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Okay,
you.
everyone. Okay,
Bye
okay,
bye.
bye.
Bye bye.